end of times, like we're awash in movies about, the apocalypse, but mostly they involve zombies and meteorites or, crazy things that actually I think in the end are kind of comforting because we know it's not going to happen like that. This is sort of more believable to me, so I jumped in with 2 feet, but my first words were, it has to be done humbly. We can't do a big, slick, watch this move kind of movie. And so I wanted it, all the choices were very, about making it just look maybe accidentally beautiful, not really too planned. And anyway, so that's how I came to do it.
Okay. Now, I mean, you've done adaptations in the past, obviously, like Mansfield Park and that. And I was just curious, in the particular case of this novel, in transforming it to the screen, just like with the particular, like, specific challenges in bringing this, in adapting this one for you.
Well, has anyone here read the book? I can't even see if you have hands. Do you have hands? You must. Yes. Okay, one back there. Okay. The book actually does chronicle and it explains what happened to society, and it was a long, slow sort of demise, that all the things that we worry about, in fact, did happen. But long, slow is hard to do in a movie, and it was just too obvious. And what I was very excited by was this idea, and terrified. So everything trades on what's exciting and frightening. Was we wouldn't know what happened. If the lights go out, if they just shut down right now, we wouldn't know. We would think it was kind of frightening, but kind of exciting. And then it's exciting for a few days. Did the great sort of blackout of the Northeast in 2003?
Yeah, no, it didn't.
It didn't touch here. It was just right on the edge here. You guys didn't have it, but huge swath of the Northeast had it, and I wasn't here. Yeah, I wasn't part of it, and I almost feel jealous of the people who experienced it, because everybody was like barbecuing their meats together out on the rooftops in the middle of the city and seeing the stars for the first time. It's kind of a big party, but it only outlasted for 3 days, and then what? And then what? And then what? So I thought, and then if the radio just stopped broadcasting anything, we wouldn't know anything. That lack of knowledge in such an information-based time was really a fascinating thing. And then I think just our personalities and how we deal with adversity would come through. The kind of oblivious and optimistic among us would be saying, oh, it'll come back, I'm just going to keep working on my career. And those that are sort of more prone to fear and predictions of doom would be maybe preparing more, or but I really think that that was something that was a change from the book. So the whole first half of the book is about the end of civilization crumbling and about the mother dying, and so I basically lopped off the first half and jumped in. It was with Ellen and I discussed it, and that's where we jumped in. I had this sketched out bit for the beginning, and it ended up feeling kind of tacked on. So yeah, so that was the choice.
Okay. Now you mentioned, obviously in this movie it avoids all the cliches that you usually see in movies involving the end of civilization and all that. I was just curious. So were there any particular films that sort of like influenced you in any way in how you wanted to go about this film?
Not really. I mean, I'm really becoming quite a fan of sci-fi now, but because I feel like it's a place where, when I started my film career, I started with the film I've Heard the Mermaids Singing, and it had some magical realism in it. It had a very kind of light and playful tone, and I find that I've gotten away from these surrealistic metaphors or something, and I find that there's a place for them in sci-fi, but I think even sci-fi is too strong a word for this. It's maybe more like speculative fiction or near-fi, I've heard that term. I'm so tired, I don't even remember your question. What was your question?
About any particular cinematic influence.
Oh, cinematic influences. It was what's the Michael Haneke movie, which opens, it has Juliette Binoche. I want to say The Hour of the Wolf. Was that it? Has anyone seen that?
I don't think she was in that one.
It's not Binoche, or was it Hubert?
Code Unknown. Who was that? I think Hubert was in that one.
Yeah, Isabelle Hubert. Anyway, Hubert. Anyway, that clearly left a huge impression on me. I can't even remember.
one of his early light funny ones, I believe.
Yes, right. But it was a case where you didn't know what was happening and why, and that was that. I watched that and I thought that's actually is very compelling. That's very that's a deep mystery. So why not have that happen?
Okay. Now, I mean, the most important thing about the movie is the relationship between the two sisters, and I think one of the things that's important is the fact that they are sisters, as opposed to like two best friends or something like that. Because even when because they're in many ways they're quite different, but I mean deep down they are they're the same blood and all that, and that in a way that becomes more important after a while. And I was just curious, for you, I mean, how important was that for these particular characters to be sisters in terms of developing them in that?
I loved that about the book, and I love that about the film, because I think there's this sort of inexplicable bond between family, and you're not even like them sometimes, and you might not even like them sometimes, but there is something very, very profound about being related, and I feel like, I'm not one of these family uber alles kind of people that I do believe that if you as an adult you don't have shared values and you drive each other crazy, then you don't have to be in each other's lives. But I do believe that if you do have some compatibility, then it's a friendship like no other. There's a trust like no other. And I did think of them, however, in this movie as heart and mind, or and they were kind of yin and yang in a way that was interesting for me. Yeah, I liked the fact of them being sisters.
Okay. I was also curious about this film, how it explores your own personal feelings in terms of your relationship with technology. So the book came out in 98 or 97 or that.
96.
So I mean, it was the internet, it was there, but it wasn't quite as prevalent as it is now. And you didn't have stuff like the instant messaging and all that. And so I think now, the loss of technology, plays a lot differently now than it probably did in the original book, or if you'd done the book set back then and all that. And I was just curious to know how that relates to how you personally feel about technology. Because I mean, as you hit on before, I mean, some people say, oh, you get rid of technology, oh, and everything will be great and everything will be wonderful. No. But then 3 days later, or even, I was grocery shopping the other day, and they have the stupid little chips in the card, and I used it one time, it didn't work, and literally it was the apocalypse happened there. No one could check me out, and this line is forming and everything. It's like, well, obviously, yeah. Well, not after shopping. So I was curious to know how this movie sort of reflects your own, feelings towards, technology and that.
Is this not working now?
Ironically.
Everything civilization almost crumbled right there. I love technology. I am an early adopter. This is my Apple Watch. I love the optimism of it. I love the imagination. I love, I don't know, it's sort of sexy. Those iPads, you can just swoop and swish and discover the world, and it's I'm always excited to see what's next. I love the technology in film. I love exploring new technology. Some of the technologies, we rush forward and we think that the new one is going to be the the Messiah, and it's, you know, it's often not, so you have to wait to find out if something is as great as his first. Anyway, I love it all, so I'm not, and there's a whole stream of, especially in sci-fi films, that say, watch it, technology is going to turn around and it's going to kill you, it's going to kill you, you know, it's a sort of various forms of sort of Frankensteins, I don't believe that. I have a love of what it's capable of doing for us. It is just, it's a knife. It's a knife that you can use to do beautiful surgery that can save your mother, or it's a knife that can stab somebody. It has no morality in and of itself. It can be abused, and it can be used beautifully. So I don't have sort of a big moral statement around technology, but we as a species have a history of inventing things, becoming entirely dependent on them, and then truly believing that we can't live without them. And I just think that that's not true. You know, I love one of my favorite lines in this is, you know, how long have humans been around? He says, I don't know, 100, 200,000 years, and how long have we had electricity? 140? Those numbers blow my mind, because it's sort of very hard to imagine us not having electricity anymore. And we're so completely dependent on, but we'd probably be okay. We'd be okay. And that's the kind of underlying hope that I think this film has. And I didn't want to do like a preposterously positive kind of Pollyanna story of you will all be happy frolicking in the woods. But I did want to say, you know what, we could function. The world will sustain us. We are an intelligent species. We'll find our way. We'll be all right.
Are you talking about the visual style that you want to go for, especially considering that it takes almost place entirely like in a very remote rural environment? I was just curious to know how that affected the visual plan for the film.
Well, I was worried about shooting in the forest because I tend to like a graphic frame, and nature's a mess, right? It's kind of like jumbly and it's not well organized. And I've usually done urban films, and I kind of really have clean lines and things. So, but then I realized the trees themselves can create so much structure in a frame. So, I did mostly handheld. I worked with this young cinematographer who had done, I think, one feature and mostly shorts, but he was a real artist. I could just tell his selections, and he was a beautiful young guy, really. I was telling this friend of mine, a woman, I said, this guy, he's so beautiful. She said, is he under 40? I said, yeah. She said, oh, men under 40 are the new women. Anyway, that was funny. And that's a compliment, gentlemen, and that's a compliment. So yes, we worked it out. We had shot lists. Not even lists, we had storyboards, like sketchy things, but for every scene, because I feel like it's very important to have a plan. And then sometimes we threw out the plan, mostly we stick to it, or we did it with variations. The rape, for instance, the plan, I thought very long and hard about how to shoot that responsibly, because the world is awash in images of women being humiliated, and I didn't want to add to that trash heap. And so I thought, okay, well, what do? You just focus on her, on her pain. But then last minute, I had the idea to turn the camera on its side just to show, you know, life askew, and I loved that decision. And then it was an accident that he stepped right in front of her face at the end. And I only did one take because I just couldn't put her through it again. And because I just knew, watching the monitor, that it's so complicated to be watching this thinking, this is amazing, this is amazing, this is so strong, but this is a rape. Why am I feeling so good about this amazing thing? Like, it was really complicated. And then she stood up afterwards, and she, you know, the crews are always like, okay, on to over here, and now we're going to move the generator, lunch break, and she just said, guys, hold on 1 second. It wasn't all guys, but it was, she just, everybody stop for 1 second, please. If you know women, you know someone that this has happened to, and if you feel bad about it, don't feel bad about it because it could be your mother, your sister, your daughter, your grandmother, or your, feel bad about it because we're human beings. And it was kind of bracing, awkward, embarrassing, powerful moment. And everybody was still and awkward for a moment. And then we went on, we moved the generator, we had our snacks and whatever. But it was she broke all the blood vessels in the capillaries around her eyes from screaming like that. Those two are amazing. Ellen and Evan, man, I would work with them and I could flash. They just want to go the distance. They want to be pushed. They were so ready. They're such pros. They both started quite young and they just know, but they're so fresh to it still because they're quite young, that they're just so emotionally ready. And they loved acting with each other. They'd come to know each other quite well. It was just as a filmmaker, it was kind of a peak moment to be able to work with those. And then the dad, I loved the dad. I had a great dad, and I just loved having this homage to a great dad. Wasn't he nice?
I think we got a couple questions out in the audience.
Okay. They don't even have to be nice, you guys.
Do we?
Come on. No question went through your mind?
Back, just shout it out. What was the point of the one scene where they're driving back and they see the guys in the car with the shotgun? Was that just to show the decline slowly to the violence?
Yeah, I think it was a kind of at one point the dad says that a crisis doesn't always bring out the best in people. You know, our mythology is always that, oh, crisis, everybody, helps each other, and isn't it nice? But no, that's not always the case. There's often people who take advantage of those moments, and it sort of motivates the dads to sort of encourage his daughters to stay in the house, I think, because they have water and wood, and they have, he said, plenty of food, but he had no idea how long it was going to be. Yeah, it was just the world was falling apart around them. I'd like to hear your feelings about the movie. I haven't shown it around that much yet, so I would just like to hear thoughts from you.
Over there on the side.
I think it's a beautiful piece of work, and
Thank you.
actually, in a funny way, it can almost be a companion piece to Grey Garden, since that's also about two women
Interesting.
in post-apocalyptic conditions.
Interesting.
Very different sense.
Thank you.
But I think you just have such a great gift of working with actors, and I'm wondering, particularly with these two, what was your approach to working with them and building that sister dynamic?
Wow. Well, thank you very much. People often say, how do you work with actors? Or they say, how do you get a good performance out of actors? And I always say, hire good ones. Because you can't put depth in someone's eyes. Once in a while, you can help someone make a joke funnier by kind of giving tips on staging or timing or something. But still, it's so much in them. So I'm always a little bit suspicious of directors who say, well, I got that performance out of them. You do in a way, just by being, like, I'm the spirit behind the movie. Ellen is too, though, because, Ellen was very much, an initiator, but the director is controlling tone, generally. And even though she was a producer on it, she became very much an actor during the filmmaking. She had maybe a little bit more say about certain things than a regular actor might, like in the actual process of shooting. But I'm just calling it as I see it. So when I'm watching them do a take, I don't say, no, not like that. Do it like I thought of, this way. And you do that and you shut them down and you don't get the best anymore. and they're not going to risk anymore because they're afraid of being shut down. So I've discovered, I don't, it's not even a policy, I just discovered it myself, I direct by asking questions. I'll say, I found myself wondering why you're not angrier. Or do you think maybe you'd be trying to hide your anger, do you think? Because you're embarrassed of it? Or it's a question, or I can just say, why is she so mopey here, or whatever, and then they'll come up with an answer, and they'll find a sort of emotional logic through it. So I'm not going to take credit for their acting abilities, but I will take credit for creating a tone of authenticity, I think, and creating a willingness to risk, like creating a safe place for them to just blow their gaskets, or burst all the capillaries in their eyelids. Yes?
I found the house really fascinating, and what happened to the house during the course of the movie and their relationship with it. Was that based on an existing structure, or was it designed specifically for the different personalities to inhabit the different parts of it?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
And be affected by the weather?
Well, that house is, it's funny, in the script I wrote a Frank Lloyd Wright-like house, and he didn't, as far as I know, build any thing on West Coast, and it was shot in British Columbia. But he had somebody that he worked with, Frederick Hollingsworth, who was a buddy, and they shared ideas apparently. So that was designed by him, but it's quite a valuable house, and so we had to create its destruction without marking the wall a tiniest little bit. So all of the mold and all of the tumbling beams, that's all fakery. That's us applying things to a perfectly protected house. And the fire is, you put fire kind of retardant all over things, and then you put up another wall that can catch fire, and then add a little bit in post. And it's also, terribly worried about forest fires for good reason. So we had fire trucks all around. It was really carefully controlled fire there. Yeah, the house, I loved how, just on a practical level, when you're shooting in a room, you want to have several points of access. Because if, the terror is just walking into a box and shooting this box. So if you have a room and each room had at least 3 or 4 doors, so that was lovely to be able to shoot, because I was just afraid of having visual diversity throughout this thing, because we spend so much time in the house. I love that you could see nature around, and I feel like lots of people have nature as almost like a painting on their walls, and they don't actually go into it, but they want to see it. So I like this idea that they saw it, but they weren't really part of it. They were there on all of their devices, and they had a sort of great view, but they weren't part of it. And but if you really want to be sort of literal and obnoxious, which I'm happy to be for you tonight, it's something makes me uneasy to say it, but it stands in a little bit for Western culture, for civilization and its degeneration, and then it raises the question, maybe, do we have to break things down in order to create a new relationship with the natural world? Do we need to do that? I'm not sure. The books seem to posit that. I'm not sure. When you're young, I think more people believe you have to tear things down in order to create something new. It's a question. I don't know.
I think we have time for one last one.
Patricia, directors sometimes can be afraid to use scores and soundtracks on their film because sometimes they feel it might overly manipulate certain emotions in the film, and yet Max Richter's score for this movie is so beautiful, it almost seems like you want to use it for as much as possible throughout. And one of my favorite sequences in the movie is after the father has his accident, and this sort of this operatic. It almost seemed like the score, you were turning the sound up to sort of really emphasize the grief that these two sisters are going through. And I was wondering how you decided to use the score throughout the film, which is generally, you know, trying to be a sort of this quiet mood piece through a lot of it, and when you decided to use the score.
Well, thank you. I love Max Richter's music, and Ellen did too. So we called him up, and it was like a cold call. I don't know where we got his phone number, and said, "Hi, this is Ellen Page and Patricia Rozema, and we just made this movie, and we'd really like you to do the score." And he said, "Oh, that's very flattering, thank you, but I just have so much on my plate, I can't do it." And we said, "Yeah, but we want you to do it." And he said, "Well, that's really, really sweet, thank you, but I am so booked, I can't tell you, and I have 3 kids, I can't work for low budget." But, "Yeah, but we want you to do it, and you have to do it for it." We just kept insisting, and it worked. And so, we got him to do it, and he again, it's you pick the right person, right? He has such a, he has this. He's full of emotion, but it's intelligent emotion. It's not gushy and manipulative. He knows how to be sort of restrained and yet really, really honest. When we were doing the piece of music for When the Baby is Born, I just said, think of your babies being born and just give me that joy. Give us that joy, and when Dad dies, just make it a grief of the ages, make it somehow bigger than one person and one love dying. And just he knows what that is, and he does, and he just somehow found it. So, scores are very difficult, and audiences are so sophisticated now, they become really, they hate being led by the music. They hate being told, danger here, look, listen to that score, there's got to be danger going on, or grief here. But if you really feel like the scene is genuinely doing that already, then you can just boost it with music. I'm just in heaven. If just picture music, that sequence is like no talking, I'm in heaven in those sequences. That's when I'm just a uppity music video director, I think. Actually, I don't know. I'm really, really happy then. But I just want to say before I leave you tonight, that some of when a filmmaker makes a film, at least in my case, sometimes you know what you're doing and sometimes you're not sure what you're grappling with. You feel like there's something powerful in it, and then the film comes out and you think, oh dear, I'm going to be up on stage with a microphone. I better think of what that was about. Or have something intelligent to say, or something. I mean, and so you come up with things after the fact. I'm just being honest with you. So, and some of the things that you think about beforehand just sort of fade away a little bit, and new things come. And one of the new things that came after I made it was that maybe the film is a little bit about, or reminiscent of, the Buddhist idea of detachment, of the importance of our being able to let go, and the things that we're most afraid of losing, maybe we should just meditate a little bit, and that this film is a bit of a meditation on knowing that we'll be okay without those things that we cling to so desperately. So that's one of the things I came up with afterwards. I don't know. I value critics. I really, really value critics, because I feel like they can sometimes tell you what you're on about, when you don't even fully understand it yourself. I've had the experience, Roger was one of them, where they explain what you're doing to you in a way that makes you feel like, thank you. Now I'm done with that and I can move on. There's something actually really, and I don't want to limit the discussion around a movie I make by speaking about it too much, she said, blathering on and on, but I don't, because I don't necessarily fully understand the context of and the impact of a movie. So think what you will, and thank you so much for coming.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming, and thanks for the movie.